afternoon, everyone. I have the great honor and privilege to welcome you here today for the round table with Congresswoman Gabby Giffords, Captain Mark Kelly, and Senator Jennifer Wexton, and others at the table who you'll meet throughout the round table. My name is Lori Haas. I'm the State Director for the Coalition to Stop Gun Violence and have been working on gun violence prevention for 11 years since the tragedy at Virginia Tech when my daughter was injured and survived that tragedy. I have the great fortune of having met Senator Jennifer Wexton in January of 2014 when she joined the Virginia Senate and her colleagues and began her work at the state level to promote, advocate, carry bills, talk on the Senate floor, and do her job and support this community, the state as a whole, in working hard to work on gun violence prevention. She has done an incredible job at the state level, and one of the most brilliant floor speeches I ever heard, interjecting and intervening in a very bad bill that would have put firearms into domestic violence situations. So I could go on and on and on about Senator Wexton and her commitment to this issue, but it is my good fortune and I'm honored and humbled to introduce to you Senator Wexton.
Thank you all so much for coming today. I am so honored to have Congresswoman Giffords and Captain Kelly here with us today, and to have this discussion about gun violence prevention. Gun violence was one of the things that prompted me to run for office in the first place. Now, I had seen firsthand as a prosecutor some of the effects of gun violence and the victims it leaves behind, but in the General Assembly, one of the things that prompted me to run was seeing that our General Assembly was more interested in repealing what few gun violence prevention measures we had in Virginia, in particular the one handgun a month law, which was repealed in the 2012-2013 timeframe. So during my time in Richmond, I have patroned legislation to do things like establish universal background checks in Virginia, to ban bump stocks, to mandate the reporting of lost and stolen firearms. And with my friend and colleague, Delegate Murphy, we have had some success in things like legislation to take guns away from domestic abusers. So we do have small successes, but sadly, given the numbers that we have in Richmond, we've been playing a lot of defense. We've been fighting against legislation that does things like put more guns in the hands of domestic abusers, put more guns in more schools and college campuses, and things that make it easier to obtain, for civilians to obtain guns like automatic weapons and even bazookas. And here in the 10th District, we have a congresswoman who is bought and paid for by the gun lobby. She has done their bidding in Richmond, she has done their bidding in Washington. After Sandy Hook, it was all thoughts and prayers and no action. And now, the time has finally come for action, and that's why I'm running for Congress. I look forward to our discussion today, and I would like to introduce our distinguished guests. First, Captain Mark Kelly. He is a United States Navy combat veteran and NASA astronaut who flew 39 combat missions in Operation Desert Storm. He was selected as an astronaut in 1996 and flew 4 missions aboard the Space Shuttle Endeavour, visiting the International Space Station on 4 different occasions. He's one of only 4 people in the world who have accomplished that. Congresswoman Gabrielle Giffords has become known around the world for her story of hope, resilience, and strength in the wake of tragedy. She was the youngest woman ever elected to the Arizona State Senate. Served before winning deciding election to the United States House of Representatives in 2006. On January 8th, 2011, Gabby was shot in the head while meeting with constituents in her hometown of Tucson, Arizona. The shooter killed 6 people that day and injured 13 others. And after months of intensive care, Gabby embarked on a courageous rehabilitation journey in the public spotlight. And she worked to take back some of the mobility and speech that had been taken away by gunfire. After resigning from Congress to focus on her recovery in January 2013, just weeks after the tragedy at Sandy Hook Elementary School, Congresswoman Giffords and her husband, Captain Kelly, founded their gun safety organization, Giffords Courage to Fight Gun Violence, and quickly became leaders in the movement to strengthen our nation's gun laws. So, you've already joined us in welcoming Congresswoman Giffords and Captain Kelly. Thank you so much for joining us.
Gabby and I to be here in Northern Virginia. We were here yesterday to go to who we consider heroes to us for different reasons. Certainly Gabby being from Arizona, John McCain is somebody that she has looked up to for a while, and myself as a Navy pilot, he is an icon in naval aviation and somebody I've known about since probably when I was in high school, when I first started thinking about being a pilot in the United States Navy. And we had the opportunity to go to his funeral yesterday, and it was a pretty remarkable event for a number of different reasons. One of the reasons, though, is how each of the speakers who who eulogized him mentioned or brought up the issue of how partisan our politics have become over the last decade, but particularly over the last couple years. And it's something we collectively need to fix around this country, in districts like Virginia 10 and in other places, to get us away from this just pure partisanship, and to find people who will run for office and get elected and then serve in a way that'll help us solve our nation's problems. And one of those problems is the problem of gun violence. And to have all of you here today on a holiday weekend is really a great thing to see. You could be out doing other things, playing golf or out on a boat or something. Probably a lot of you have tomorrow off as well, but instead, you're here fighting for change in Virginia and around the country. And Gabby and I are certainly looking forward to hearing from everybody here about how this issue has affected them and what they think we possibly could be doing our jobs differently. And we're very interested in that, to hear ideas from all of you. But thank you for everybody in this room, especially the moms. Moms demand action. We love seeing you guys. Almost everywhere we go, you're there. And it's great to see you, and we appreciate all the work you do. You may have seen Gabby on TV here in Virginia. Me too, standing in the corner. Well, you mostly heard from Gabby, and it's because the person that currently represents you in Congress, as Senator Wexton mentioned, has been in the pocket of the National Rifle Association for a long period of time and has utterly failed in protecting people in this community and in our nation from gun violence. She has basically towed the party line of the National Rifle Association her entire time in Congress. She is funded by them. She's supported by them. She looks for people that support that organization to vote for her. And because of that, we have a very difficult time getting things done in Washington, D.C. Now, around the country, since we founded our organization in 2013, we've helped pass a lot of state laws, like 250 pieces of legislation, 45 different states, including here in Virginia, in Richmond. We've been very successful in doing that. We would like to be as successful in Washington, D.C. Now, fortunately, we believe we've helped change the politics on this issue a lot, and we've prevented the National Rifle Association's priorities from being enacted in D.C. And those things currently: concealed carry reciprocity, legalization of silencers, and essentially getting rid of guns in K through 12 public schools. Now it's more they want to arm teachers, so they want to introduce firearms into schools, which all of you know is a terrible idea. We know that where there are more firearms, there's more gun violence. That's clearly the case around the country. One of the reasons why we have 36,000 people getting shot and killed every year, another 110,000 shot and injured. It's ridiculous. We're like no other country on the planet when it comes to gun violence, especially for a developed, wealthy nation. It shouldn't be like that, but it's this way because of money and politics. And that's what we're trying to fix here. That's why Gabby's on TV. That's why she went straight to camera, I think for the first time, in an ad that isn't entirely positive, but makes a very clear point that the person that has been representing you for a long period of time has done nothing on this issue. And we need to get that message out there. And hopefully we're doing it successfully. Hopefully it's on the channels. Hopefully we're buying the time from the channels that people are watching. And they're not on in the middle of the night. I hope that's it. And this is a crisis in our country. And Gabby and I know. I mean, we are convinced that the person who won the Democratic nomination to represent all of you is the person sitting right next to me, is the person that can work to enact real change on this issue. And that change not only affects people here, but across the country. So we are here to hear from all of you. I want to go around and get everybody's story, but first I want to ask just a couple general questions to everybody. Now, not counting Gabby, and not counting if you've served in the military. Who's the military guy here? Not counting you knowing anybody who got shot overseas. I'm just curious, how many people in here know somebody who has been shot, not necessarily killed, but just shot in our countries with a firearm? So that's about 40%, I would say. That's pretty typical around the country. No matter where you go, it's usually about 40%. You know, I've done that same thing in England and Australia. You know how many hands go up? 0. Like every time I've done it. I did the same thing in Albuquerque, New Mexico about, 2 weeks ago, Tom? 2-3 weeks ago? Did the same thing with a bunch of students, like 10 high school students. You know how many hands went up? Every single one of them. Every kid. And these kids did not go to the same school, and they did not come from the same socioeconomic background. Various different backgrounds, different schools, different parts of the state even. And every one of them have experienced gun violence, at least first or second hand, knowing somebody who's been shot. I think 3 of these 10 people have been shot at themselves. It's tragic. And if you don't think it could get worse, if we allow people like Barbara Comstock to stay in Congress, that number could go from 36,000 to 50,000 in a heartbeat. It really can. So we need to fight not only for this issue. I mean, obviously Jennifer's going to work hard on this issue, but there's so many other issues that probably all of you care about as well, where we can find bipartisan solutions to solve this country's problems. So why don't I start over there with, on the other end of the table, Jacob. And Jacob, just tell us a little bit about what you're doing on this issue. Give us any recommendations you might have, and I might interrupt you while you're talking.
So yeah, my name is Jacob, and I, along with Lane, we started the Loudoun County chapter of Students Demand Action. I personally got involved with this issue is because for as long as I can remember, we would go to school, and at least once a month, we would have an active shooter drill. These drills was so common that people just start making jokes about them, and it's like just part of our normal day. And people kind of just accepted the fact that at any time during the school day, a shooter can come into our school and just cut a bunch of lives short. So then we kind of just accepted that until everything changed on February 14th. The Parkland shooting was kind of a wake-up call for us, when we realized that this is an actual problem in our country and not just part of our school day where they turn the lights off and we hide quietly in the corner. It's why the shooting, it made me realize that my life could have just as easily been added to the growing list of names that politicians funded by the NRA, like Barbara Comstock, continue to ignore. It's why we walked out of class, it's why we marched for our lives, it's why we started Students Demand Action in Loudoun County, and it's why we're here supporting Jennifer Wexton.
Okay. So for as long as I can remember, I've been raised in a household full of activists. I have three older sisters and one younger sister, and amazing parents that have always supported me in whatever I want to do. And so I remember being 8 years old and working on the Obama campaign. I remember in 3rd grade, yeah, I would go door to door and canvass until sunset. I remember in 3rd grade, it was the last day of school before winter break. I remember all the parents were in the classrooms helping us with crafts and, you know, celebrating the holidays. And I remember news struck of Sandy Hook. And I just remember all the tearful parents. You know, it's like, you know, gun violence is such a prominent issue in America. And parents were facing the reality that, like, their kids could just be shot at school, you know, without even knowing. And so I've grown up, you know, I've grown up just hoping I could be that change for the people that don't have their voices anymore. And so, you know, I have memories in school, kids were so, like, scared. I could see it in their eyes during the active shooter drills. You know, this past couple months, kids have been setting up barricades in classrooms, asking teachers what they would do in certain situations in the bathroom, at their lockers, where to hide. Kids are truly worried. They see it's a reality in our schools and in our public places now. We're not safe anywhere we go. And it's, you know, and everyone has to care, and it's way too long. Change has been overdue, and, you know, ever since Parkland, I've just been so shaken up. It's like my eyes, like I was just risen up. And I've always been wanting to be that change, and now it's the time for me to fight with everyone else, my peers and I. We've been waiting for so long, and it's the time now to do this, because if we don't, it's like they're saying the numbers could just grow, and we need politicians that'll support us. You know, our communities are so strong, and we need to just keep that strength and make sure that we're all gonna stay safe. And, you know.
How many kids do you have working with you?
Right now, because we just started this, you know, over the summer, we just have the leaders, so about, I'd say, like 8 to 10, and it's all of Loudoun County, so we're getting students from all over different high schools and middle schools to come join us.
Great. I take it you're with Moms Demand Action.
I'm not sure how you know. We're very inconspicuous usually wherever we go. Yeah, so my name is Jen Miller, and I am from the western end of District 10, so in Winchester, Virginia, which is very culturally different than this area of Northern Virginia. And I am the chapter lead in Winchester, and we started our group of Moms Demand Action right after Parkland as well. And really it was people like Jacob and Lane who just got on TV and said enough is enough. And I think something really pulls at the heartstrings of all mothers, fathers, aunts, uncles, grown-ups, when they see children who are pleading for their lives and knowing that we have let this culture just continue without doing something about it. And so I think it was a wake-up call for many of us as adults as well, to just step up and say, we've got to join in this chorus of people who have been actively working to end gun violence for quite some time. And there has been such a groundswell in this grassroots campaign since Parkland. And so Moms Demand Action, as everybody knows, is a nonpartisan organization that supports the Second Amendment, but really just wants common sense gun laws on the table. And that's what we advocate for, and we've been pretty successful. And the good news is that we have a great candidate now who has our election, and that's Jennifer Wexton. And so we're going to be working our tails off in District 10 to get her elected this year.
Tried to recruit any people, candidates, moms to run for like local, like city council?
So we're getting there. We've
School
actually
board?
had surprisingly great turnouts for all of our meetings, all of our calls to action. I mean, I think it would be surprising to know that we have about 50 to 60 active members in Winchester right now, and way more on our membership roster. But yes, hopefully that is the outcome of all of this, is that as we get more into legislative issues, do more campaigning, that will turn our Board of Supervisors and our school boards around as well.
Great, great. Naveed, who's a vet and served in the U.S. Army?
Yes, sir.
In Iraq?
Yes, sir. So my name is Naveed Shah. I'm from Springfield, Virginia. I actually joined the Army in 2006, right out of high school, and then I was deployed to Iraq in 2009. And November 2009, the Fort Hood shooting happened, and I was in Iraq, and my wife and my son were at Fort Hood. And that completely turned everything upside down for me, because suddenly I wasn't the one who was in danger anymore, they were. And that 300 square mile military base became a tiny little thing that they could, who knows what could have happened. Luckily they were fine, they were nowhere near where the actual shooting was happening. But in that moment I realized that I'm walking around with an M16 every day because I'm in a war zone.
Right.
There's a good reason for that. Why does anyone need that when they're walking around the streets back home? And that's why I'm here. I just feel like there's something we can do about this, and I'm glad to see Moms Demand Action and all the other groups who are here, who are really taking this issue to heart, because I think it's really, really important, especially now that my kids are in school. I don't want to see them have to deal with this the way some of us do.
Pastor Michelle?
Okay. Pastor Michelle, I pastor Holy and Whole Life Changer Ministries. We are about a 12-year-old ministry, but unfortunately, maybe around 2 to 3 years ago, we had our founding members, 2 of our founding members, killed by gun violence. It was a murder-suicide, and that was very eye-opening for me. Devastating, because it didn't have to happen. If we had sensible gun laws, it could have been avoided. The other thing is, I'm a mom, and so as a person of faith, not only do I get a chance to console the entire community, but I have to look my kids in the face every morning and say, you will be back. You're coming back. And every day and every year that goes by where we have another mass murder, I say that to my children, but then I go in that closet and pray to God and say, God, please bring them back. And that's a sad thing. That's a sad thing. It doesn't have to be that way. The other reason why I'm here and I'm really speaking out is because I'm now a student. And so, yes, I send my kids off to school, but then at nighttime, I'm going to school and I hear the same spiel that they hear. When they tell them this is the way to exit the building, I feel that. I know that there could be a shooter and I could be gone too. And so it affects me in many different ways, and I realize that my thoughts and my prayers are simply not good enough. The Bible says that faith without works is dead. And so it's time to put action, and that action should come from the church.
Hello, my name is Karan Sains. I'm on the Loudoun County Board of Supervisors representing the Sterling District. Welcome to Sterling. Thank you guys for coming, and thank you, Senator Wexton, for all of your efforts to do down in the General Assembly. And the reason why I'm here is my family, in a blink of an eye, was changed overnight, where unfortunately my eldest brother was murdered by his girlfriend at the time. And then again, in the blink of an eye, my 2 nieces and my nephew were pretty much orphaned. My brother was killed, and their mother was put away in jail for the rest of her life. Luckily, we have a very close-knit family. We're able to rally around those kids, support them, help them grow up. The youngest at the time, little Terrence, was only 3 years old. He just turned 18 last month and graduated from high school, and actually is working on an apprenticeship. And he's working on an apprenticeship with a local union, actually, to get a trade and provide and do well for himself. But those kids, I admire them every single day, because they could have done different things with themselves because with losing their mother and their father, but they did not let that run them into the ground. They rose up and became something of themselves, and just here to make sure we do whatever we can to make sure that does not happen in other families and other homes for a small heated argument. And just even last night, actually, my family lives in Sterling, Flint, Michigan, excuse me. But even last night at Algonquian Park, Regional Park, there's a nice banquet venue there. A family function was going on. There was a heated exchange, and two gentlemen, one had a gun and shot somebody that he knew. Fortunately, the person that was shot is going to make it and was not life-threatening injuries, and the authorities are looking for the other, the culprit. But just to show, Flint, Michigan, everybody knows about Flint, Michigan with the water crisis and the dire straits that are happening with Flint with when GM pulled out and everything. But just to show what's happening in Flint can just as well happen here in Sterling, Loudoun County, which everybody would say is a very affluent community and neighborhood. So it doesn't matter if you're in the suburban area or the urban area or rural area. Gun violence is all over the place, and we need to do what we can to figure out what's going on and come up with some, as the moms say, some common sense reforms to make sure this epidemic does not continue to happen in our communities every single day.
I'm Delegate Kathleen Murphy. I represent the 34th District in the Virginia House of Delegates, which is in 2002, my brother owned a bar and restaurant, and at 2:30 in the afternoon, gunmen came in and robbed him and shot and killed him. He was the father of 5, and he was a wonderful brother. I've always been working on the issue of gun violence, really, since I was a young kid. But that really set me on a path that led me to run against Barbara Comstock for the House of Delegates. We couldn't defeat her then because, people were very convinced that she was good at her job and she paid attention to the issues important to her community. But it's a farce. She is a farce. And she lies about her voting record. So this year we have a genuine candidate, someone whose word you can rely on, someone who works really hard. In the House of Delegates, I started the Gun Violence Prevention Caucus, and I've co-chaired the Safe Virginia Initiative, which we put together kind of in response to what the Republicans were doing when they call looking at children's safety in schools, but then they refuse to address the issue of guns. I mean, that's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. I did get one gun bill passed. It was almost a miracle. Jennifer knows about it, and she worked very hard on it. This is a bill to take guns out of the hands of those under a protective order. But it took really McAuliffe's action, and it was not the best bill we could have ever gotten, but it was a step in the right direction. It was at least one bill. This year I put a bill in to take guns out of the hands of people convicted twice of domestic abuse. I made it a felony on the second conviction. You will not believe why that bill cannot pass. Because 11,700 men were convicted twice for domestic abuse, and it would have cost us $15 million to put them all in jail. 11,000 men are committing domestic abuse, and we're not willing to address it as a real threat to the well-being of women. So besides that, it's a gun issue, it's a safety issue, and it is being responsible as a community for the families that live here. And I know when Jennifer Wexton beats Barbara Comstock,
so we supported, I think, maybe 17 House of Delegate candidates last November. And almost all of them won. There was one that came down to the coin flip. Now, what has been the impact of losing the, well, I think it was pulling it out of an ugly vase, but what was the impact on this issue of losing that flip of the coin?
well, the issue is we're one vote short from success. Every time we put a bill up, that bill is defeated. that bill is defeated because they have really 2 more votes than we do.
Right. So to all of you out there, anybody who watches this, if you ever, for any of your friends who might think their vote doesn't matter, well, here in Virginia, and I use this example all over the country, in the Virginia House of Delegates, that 1 vote did matter, and it has an enormous impact in this state. So we've got to get people out to vote.
Well, next year, don't forget, you have to vote for all of us. Again, we've got 3 more members of the House of Delegates in back.
That's right.
David Reed. Terry Delaney. David Oh my gosh, and voicemail.
And let's turn it over to Jeremy McPike, who's a state senator here in Virginia, a volunteer firefighter, and somebody that our organization supported, or I don't know, I can't remember exactly what we did, but we helped. Hopefully we were helpful in getting you elected in 2015.
Yes, thank you, Captain. Yeah, I'm Jeremy McPike, 29th Senate District, which is Dale City, Woodbridge, out to Manassas. Manassas is in the 10th. This issue has impacted me in a couple different ways. I lost my brother to suicide when he was 16, and really didn't do much about it for about 12 to 14 years, not able to really talk about it. I've done some work, as Jennifer knows, in the Senate, and she's been great to work with on various issues around that, and make sure we've got some resources at the table for our youth. The second role, as the captain mentioned, is my role as a firefighter and EMT over the last 18 years. Probably, if not the only member of the General Assembly that has actually pronounced people dead from gunshot wounds, between accidental, between intentional, you name it. So I've seen some of the direct impacts in our streets, which is important. I mean, third is probably more important to me as not just a legislator, but as a father of 3 girls, 1 in high school, 1 in middle school, 1 in elementary school. Is after Parkland, I remember we were down in Richmond, and my daughter called me saying, "Dad, what can you do?" And she's a big fan of Hamilton, as many are. And I said, "You remember that song, You Don't Have the Votes?" I don't have the votes. And so that's one of the reasons why I absolutely know we need Jennifer Wexton in Congress, although I'm going to miss her in the Senate. That's phase 2. When she wins, we got to make sure we get that going and we win the majority in the Senate and the House in 2019. But those are the key. We need Jennifer in Congress. We need to no longer tell our daughter, our sons, you don't have to vote.
And then finally over to Lori, the state director for the Virginia Coalition of Stop Gun Violence.
Thank you. I've been doing some form of gun violence prevention work since April of 2007, when what was then the largest mass shooting in America occurred, in our backyard in Blacksburg, Virginia. At the time there wasn't anybody who didn't know someone connected to that tragedy. And as a mother, I just couldn't wrap my brain around the fact, that this had happened. I got a phone call that morning, "Hi, Mommy, I've been shot." And she's doing well. I'm the proud grandmother of 2. But, there were too many families that day, whose loved ones didn't come home. I made the drive to Blacksburg going 100 miles an hour, and there were, EMTs and fire and rescue and authorities and law enforcement, and all I sobbed the entire way, because there were 32 families making that same drive to pick up their dead children. And I committed my life to it then, and I'm still doing it now. And one of the things that I want to say is, it's working. We are making a difference. You are making a difference. Everybody at this table is making a difference. In Governor McAuliffe's last year in office, we had to ask for 12 vetoes the other side had passed 12 really bad bills. Guns here, guns there, let's weaken this, weaken that law, let's weaken that law. In 2018, subsequent to the hard work by the House of Delegates and their colleagues in the Senate, and the people in this audience and the people across Virginia, I did not ask for a single veto. Nothing passed. Two bills made it to the House of Delegates floor, and the leadership wouldn't even allow a vote.
That's right.
They would have armed people, they would have allowed guns in churches, and they would have armed first responders with little to no training. So you're doing your job, we're doing our job. This is not only the moral high ground, we have seen time and time again, it's the political high ground. When people run on gun violence prevention, they win. So we are excited to have Jennifer running. We are excited for the support that everybody here shows her, and the leadership that Captain Kelly and Congressman Giffords have showed time and time again, at the local level, at the state level, and at the federal level. So the momentum is on our side, and morally, as the pastor said, we are in the right place. So I admire you here. I'm not going away. I know that the senator is not going away. She's just going a little bit further up the highway over in Washington, D.C. And you know, we're going to make this happen, and with all of you and with y'all's leadership, we're determined, more determined than ever.
Yeah, so the politics on this issue is clearly shifting. Takes a lot of hard work over a long period of time to make that happen. I think in places like Virginia, it's a combination of that. It's also probably a little bit of a combination of if one party is in power in a legislature for a long period of time and they keep passing their bad gun bills, well, what do they do the next cycle, right? The next session, their thing has to get worse and worse, and finally people start realizing, well, we can't actually pass that. So that's part of it. But just like you're seeing here in Congress, we're also seeing even a positive movement among the Republican members of the House and the Senate. And let me try to explain this. The NRA's concealed carry reciprocity bill just passed here in December of 2017. The last time it got a vote, I think, was in 2012. In 2012, 30 or about 40 Democrats voted for it. In 2017, only a handful did, like 4 or 5. The same thing with Republicans voting against it. It was only a few of them that voted against it in 2012. This time it was 14. So the politics are moving in the right direction, and despite the fact that you see a House and a Senate and a President that all are clearly, in general, aligned with the National Rifle Association, they can't get their stuff passed. And it's because we got solid support from the Democrats, and we even have Republican members of the House and Senate that are not supportive of this bad legislation. So I think we're going to continue to see that as long as we all keep working together. Working hard on this issue, not going away, not giving up, electing the right candidates to office, getting candidates like Jennifer and others elected to the House, getting rid of people like Barbara Comstock. I think we could find something else for her to do. Imagine there's things she's very good at, just not serving in Congress. So we're gonna continue to work here, and I know Jennifer has some more words, but let me just turn it over to Gabby for a second, because I think she had a message for all of you.
These are scary times. Racism, sexism, lies, violence. It's time to stand up for what's right. It's time for courage. We must do something. We must stop gun violence. Protect our children, our future. Let them lead the way. Make our country a safer place, a better place. Do you have the courage to fight? Stand with me. Vote, vote, vote. Election day, your voice matters. Please join your voice with mine. Thank you very much.
little bit, but what's gonna help a lot is you guys knocking on doors and making phone calls and doing what you can to help her raise the money, whatever you can do to raise the money to be